Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a castover. It is a castover that is being recorded on the 23rd of January, 2023. And that's two 23s, which is two threes. And with that out of the way, we can talk about the game that we have on our hands today. This is TheShambler against Keyan. Keyan bearing the moniker Crowborn Fraud Slayer, although without the E at the end. I don't know if Crowborn with an E, or Born with an E, is a British thing or not, but I've always ended up using that. I mean, as you guys remember from the old Toddborn mod, right? That was my brother's birthday present, which is actually, my brother's birthday coming back up again soon, so who knows what's going to happen there. A little teaser for nobody besides him, but I don't even know if he watches these, so... Oh, well, there is a lattice going down, and you know what? Keyan's playing as Protoss. TheShambler is in the game, and therefore, I think TheShambler is going to end up being a bit of a rager, bit of a rude dude at this point. And he's actually kind of slow on the draw for anything in particular. Hydrock Den coming down now. I mean, he only just now had the gas, but he was a little bit lax on the Vespene harvesting, and that means that with the lattice, yeah, okay, I think maybe TheShambler might have something to complain about here pretty soon. We'll see. See if we get any worker frags coming up. There was a mod, I can't remember what it was, that replaced the kills string with frags. I think that was like the I don't remember what it was, but it was something by the Koreans, so it might have been Dawn of Change or something. I think it was Dawn of Change, but before that it was Riot of Star, or maybe it was the after. I can't ever remember the chronology, but those guys are real goofballs. So TheShambler scouts that the scout from Keyan is still there, but I like the idea that TheShambler scouts with that. So he's getting his Kagran, by the way, and the vassals are out. So basically this is like neutralized. I don't know really what's going to happen here. So he actually does target the Kagran manually. I guess it's because he can't see the progress bar, right? Like he doesn't have he doesn't have what we have in that particular case. So we know that there's been no casualties at this point. The vassals have been neutralized. Now, what you could see, this isn't what Keyan is doing because he's building more vassals. What you could see Keyan do is like basically have a performative set of vassals that go up and then immediately switch over to like manifolds for firepower to deal with the hydras. But that's not what he's doing, right? And he has withdrawn his scout. But I do like that Shambler moved a worker there. I don't know if he intended to expand or what, but if he didn't intend to expand, then it's good to show that you're trying to, just because it makes people a little bit cautious, right? So a Zealot comes out, a Dracodon coming out afterwards, and this should be more than enough to hold. Although it's 4 Hydras, so it's a little bit more powerful than maybe we would expect. So indeed, that is going to cause one of the Hydras to pop there. We're going to see what happens next. Okay, they're focusing down weirdly. They're not really focus firing the Zealot. But now that the Zealot has gone down, these vassals are basically nothing. We'll see what happens. I don't know if he can focus down the pylon in time for the Dracodon to stop. He's going to pull some scribes for that. One of them does go down, so that's only 2 Hydras left, and the Dracodon should be able to clean this up. At this point, it's just a question of whether Shambler can do any more eco damage. He's going to go ahead and burrow one of them, then unburrow that, and then fall back. Okay, so that was a bit confusing. Keyan is also seemingly a little confused. He's going to go ahead and drop a Matrix and then go back to harvesting some gas. So I'm not sure about a Matrix. Maybe Keyan's worried about a Skithercore follow-up or something to that effect. Still no expose for either player, but a bit confusing for me. Because I look at this and I'm like, Matrix. It's only dealing 8 damage. I don't remember if it has armor pen or not. Obviously, Hydras have some armor, right? 2 armor. And there you go. There's a Shambler expo. So now we could see a longer game. Remember, this map is kind of designed to facilitate that. I did update this map so that there's an extra mineral field towards the apex of the base. Well, the outer facing part, obviously it's XY sim, and then I removed this terrain thing. So basically, it's a little bit more open on that side. And while I'm talking about map design, of course, we're missing some action, bro. So the vassals go down early. That is a bit of a problem for Keyan. I mean, you want them to do their thing, right? You want them to pop so that you get the benefit. And this is a bit tricky from Keyan. He's actually going to wrap all the way around, and maybe he's assumed that this base is up, and if it's... Like, this is sort of like a good move no matter what. If this base is going down, you pressure it, you maybe kill some workers if it's already up. If it's not, you can attack from up here in an unexpected angle, right? And I don't think Shambler's going to expect this. He's actually looking for the Dracodons, and only now is he going to find them. So he's just going to wrap up, and I don't think Keyan will expect them to come from this angle. He will expect this side, right? This side of reinforcements, and then maybe he falls back into this sort of trap that's being set up. So that's kind of cute. And of course, you see that overlay bug there, which it mostly happens with Terran structures. But it's like, oh, hey, you know, my structure finished, and it has some amount of HP, and now, like, you know, it's been damaged before it. So as soon as it repairs or heals or whatever, that's when the overlay actually kicks in, or if it takes damage again. I don't know why it doesn't immediately fire the damage overlay check when it is finished, but that's lard for you. So we got a pretty decent number of Hydras, right? This is like 9 Hydras all told. And there's not more on the way, but we do have a couple of vital workers. If I pan over to this base, what has Keyan been up to? He's got a lot of money. Sort of, well, I say a lot, only 400. And the vassals popping here are going to get his zealots into the fight a lot easier. And this is just like, as long as this front line persists, right, we're doing okay. But the loss of those early Drakodins is pretty bad, pretty crippling in that sense, right? Because it's pretty expensive to field those units. It obviously locks you out from building any zealots either. I'm not even really sure why Shambler is so concerned about this. He can kind of ignore, like, the 0 armor means that he's taking 4 damage. So that's, I mean, the 4 damage per hit or whatever, that's pretty rough. And now at this point, he's, you know, Keyan's doing a pretty good job of splitting attention at this point, right? There's actually no more gas for another Hydra. Okay, now he can build one, right? But now he's sort of like, oh shit, what do I do? You know, there's a fucking a Mongoman in my base. And what can I do with that? So the Azira Core is out to deal with the with that threat, and now he's aptly pulled back the Hydras to deal with the Drakon. And that probably should have been done a lot sooner. Like, as soon as the vassals come up here, you probably don't save any workers. Maybe you borrow them. I know Shambler likes to do that. But, you know, realistically speaking, you kind of need to just pull immediately and save your main at that point from the Dragon. And so, good split, right? It's like pressuring Shambler. But the decision-making to try to sort of defend that, but only one side of that. Like, he picked the lower value target. Like, the vassals weren't going to pop the Hacharovsk, even though it was already wounded from Drakodins. And, you know, all right, at this point, Shambler kind of feels pressured to maybe see if he can poke his head in and do something. Matrix isn't going to do much. Again, it's got only 1 armor pen, so it's dealing 7. Yeah, okay, so it will deal 7 damage, I guess, is the idea. 2 Hydras. And obviously 6 to Azira Cores. So there isn't much here. Now, Shambler will confirm no third. This is usually the third location. He doesn't know whether or not there's been an attack, or rather whether or not there's been an expansion anywhere else. So he's got a couple of troops misrallied here and there. Another Kagan colony going down in the main. That's going to be a Circuth, I figured. And he hasn't Iquare. He hasn't scouted the Iquare. He has not scouted the Acantor yet, I don't believe. Now he's going to scout and confirm this is a 1 base. He doesn't know for sure, I guess, but that's basically, like, those are the 2 logical positions he would probably take. And now he could, in theory, run right up here, you know, depower the Matrix and the sequestered icon and maybe start working on the Nexus. Depending on timing, this could actually be a really good, you know, base trade or something if you know, it's decided that Keyan wants to move out. Both players keeping their money relatively low, I imagine, you know, not really a whole lot of anything. But crucially, the Shambler has not decided to get any additional tech. At this point, you know, you might think, well, Pronogo, what kind of tech can I get against, you know, a Cantor? Well, first of all, Shambler doesn't even know that the Cantor is there. But second of all, you know, Lakizilisks would obviously be great against the Zealots. He has scouted that there's a decent number of them, right? At this point, he can probably surmise there's 2 gates. So he's just going to recover his forces at this point. Maybe you're worried about gas, but he's not even harvesting gas from the main. I mean, from the Nat. So, you know, like, yeah, you probably want Gorger Cores just for the vassals. You could obviously go for Naths for the splash. You could go for, you know, Zethar Cores, Vorvor Cores in particular for a beefier front line alongside the Azira Cores. Now, once you get into a Cantor technology, well, that's a tier 2 unit, so it's a little bit harder to imagine. But, you know, what did everybody always do with Reavers back in the day? They would send a couple Hydras at it, and they'd try to split their shots so that they would, like, bait out the attacks. And then when the shots went out, that's when they were like, okay, now it's time. You know, this is such a critical... Okay, he doesn't go north. If he went north with this attack force, it would be almost, like, unwinnable, I feel like. But that being said, we're going to see how this engagement goes. So he does bait out the shots from the Acantor. They don't do friendly splash, so there's actually no risk for Keyan to do this. But, you know, he's confirmed that it exists, and he's probably like, wait, I don't actually remember how that works. How far is their splash? Oh my god. Okay, he does pop one of them. Oof, but the late detonation on that one is really rough. That might be the moment that costs him here. It was a really tough fight to win anyway. He's going to go ahead and get another Circuith. He is trying to get some units out, but I just feel like it's too little too late at this point. This probably could very well be GG. He does have a couple of Hydras in the Nat. And the Spray Colony's popping some Vassals. He's going to go ahead and burrow his workers. And, you know, a flanking force comes down and tries to deal with the Acantor, which then fires a stray shot. That's a really vicious shot right there at the very end, because those Hydras would have been able to tear apart the Vassals eventually. But, yeah, at this point, okay, well, they're going to take out some of this stuff. The Hydrock then is the next in target. I would even try to use the workers to maybe drill this or something, but with the Hydrock then going down, this is really rough. This force can get cleaned up potentially. The workers, some of the workers do wisely stay, and they're ignoring the Vassals, which is really good. Okay, one of them pops, that's not so good. But ignoring the Vassals so that you don't allow your ally or your enemy to benefit, rather, that's pretty legit. At this point, like, it still seems kind of unwinnable, but Keyan has so many resources he's not spending, which, you know, maybe you can say that that's actually points in his favor because he can do something. Quasark pool going down. Okay, the Shambler is going to try to hold this, or hold on. His 3 Hydras could take out this force. They get low HP Zealot, low HP Dracodon, no reinforcements immediately coming. Okay, there's some Vassals, so... And yeah, he's asking, are you one-basing? So the fact that he's one-basing, I mean, I don't know why you even answer this question if you can, but, you know, he's trying to be a good sport, I guess. The fact that he's one-basing is what gives the Shambler room for this particular thing being legit, right? Like, now he can sort of say, okay, well, I still have, like, maybe equal workers or something. Like, yeah, it's about equal workers, and, you know, like, Keyan actually has less mining workers now, which is something you never see for Zerg. So... you know, make of that what you will. This attack force is going to be pretty pretty hard here. If the Zephyr Cores can dive on the Zealots, they can do some pretty good DPS. But he's pulled them back away from that, and now the Vassals are just wrecking shit. And the Quasarok goes down. He can't even build any more combat units. So okay, I mean, like, I don't know, man. He could unburrow and build a fucking tech structure over here as like a sneak. I don't know if that's going to happen. And then, yeah, the Dracon's just going to slowly tickle that away. The Hydralisk is like, oh, I'm a endangered species. Please protect me. I don't know about... Dude, what? How could you do this? You know what? It might work. Okay, the attack force has been baited in here. Definitely not a good trade. There is... yeah, okay. It's GG now for sure. I mean, it was always in favor of Keyan as soon as the Acantors came out and they weren't given a proper response. But yeah, definitely not going to counter Acantors with workers, as he's probably noticing now. And you know, maybe I guess one of the things you could try to do is give them a minimum range, but not sure. Not sure, man. Rough, very rough. And that should be GG right there. I mean, he's got a Hatteras being put down in his main. Clearly, he cannot win. Second base is now established for Keyan, so it's probably just maybe he's typing out an anti-Protoss manifesto, or maybe he's playing hide the hatch. You never know. I think maybe it might be the latter. What the fuck is going on? At this point, Keyan must be like, question mark? Yeah, checking to see if he has the island. That's not a bad move. Obviously, instead, all of these bases are terrestrial. They're all land bases. So. Yep, there's the GG. Okay, he's gonna GG out. He recognizes when he's finished, and that will be the game. So, what can we learn from this particular match? So obviously, Shambler does have a bit of a trying to think. It's like a bias, but I wanted to use a word that was more eloquent than bias. He's not super much of a fan of Protoss being able to adapt all the time, but the adaptation does take time to take root. It's not as much time, perhaps, to get like one unit as it is for Terran or Zerg, but Terran or Zerg can then get many more of those units because they just pay for the acquisition cost once, right? And so if you want to pay for like many sequestered icons, that's more expensive than paying for like, you know, an Atlas into like each individual machine shop, right? So there's like a higher upfront cost for the other races, but a lower base cost, which translates to a lower like scaling cost over time because you're paying less for every single time you grab the unit. So hopefully that is understood. But in this particular case, and he didn't even complain in this case, so I'm not even picking on him. I'm just sort of observing that I think most of the people who play the mod will probably feel like Protoss is OP because of the fact that they can adapt to so many different things. It does require a lot of knowledge about the tech tree. It also requires that you can get punished for over specializing by getting like a million different production structures, but only like one of each or something. And then you don't actually have the ability to form a coherent army. that is strong against any particular other composition, right? So anyway, hopefully there's going to be some games that come up, maybe the next game, that will illustrate to people that you actually can indeed counter the Protoss sort of, I guess, raison d'etre. I don't know. You can counter their modus operandi at the very least. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. So anyway, that's going to be it. I'll show you the score screen real quick. I try to get in the habit of doing this so you can see what the deal is. Although I don't really know what the utility of the score screen is, but some people like it. So there you go. That's it. From the score screen to the epic screen, the big screen perhaps, if you're watching this on a TV for some reason, we are back with the Shambler and Keyan. This is the second game, and I was only sent 2 replays, and so far I think we might have found a way to crack the code, alright? Because Shambler, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to experiment with some of the very weirdest things possible. So apparently, dying to an AI on a fresh instance, like a fresh start of the game, and then watching a replay fixes some things. That's what I was told. So I tried that, and it did seem to behave differently, like meaningfully differently. So we're going to see if that fixes it. Anyway, if you're having difficulty or whatever with getting the replays to work, you might try that. You know, you never know, man. So both of our players here have gone for a 200 mineral structure, the Quasrock pool for the Shambler, and the Lattice once again as an opener for Keyan. We'll see if the Shambler anticipates it or not. I suspect that he will do something of that nature, but the Quasrock is interesting. Now he's starting to harvest a little bit of gas. This is Mouth of Hell by Night of the Realm. It has fat minerals. I do think that no matter what you decide as a mapper, it's probably fair game as long as like it's reasonably playable, right? So you can have really low minerals. You know, I think the Underwood is an example of a map that has fairly low minerals. And then there's, of course, you know, other such activities like this map, which has a lot of fat minerals. You know, there's all sorts of options, right? So it really depends on what you want. Here we actually have 2 Kagran opener. Wait, that's actually a 3rd Kagran. So I'm guessing this is Larvosk because he's already got the gas. He just needs 75 minerals for it. Following that up with, I guess, 2 Spraiths, and that will adequately respond to the vassal threat that may or may not decide to waltz its way up. Keyan has a pylon over here, which is a little puzzling. I guess that's so that he can warp in static defense if he feels the need, but neither of our players has bothered scouting. And I think as psychologically, right, you're sitting here and you're playing your game and you're like, well, I'm not going to scout because I want to be super greedy, get all the money I can, and then like surprise my opponent or whatever. And you know, I guess if you're playing random, I don't think Keyan was in this particular case. I got to start remembering people to tell me, did they play random or not? Mist did actually tell me that once, but I don't even remember if I cast the replay or not. So owned. But you know, we like that. We like that kind of thing around here. But I'm pretty sure he was just Protoss both games, so that's fine. That being said, if nobody scouted, like that's an interesting psychological situation to be in. Because if you've been scouted, you at least know, like, okay, my opponent knows what I'm doing, and you can start to think maybe they'll respond with something in particular. But since Keyan hasn't been scouted and Shambler hasn't been scouted, like the fact that neither of them knows what they're doing, but also neither of them knows that the other person knows what they're doing, if that makes any sense. This is starting to get into like 6 degrees of Schaefer, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. It's like that total lack of knowledge, it creates some randomness, but anything but random will be the outcome of this particular attack. You can see that the Zethicors are quite confused why they're being pelted from above. So some Circuith colonies going down now, even though he spotted vassals. This Larvosk colony is in a weird position, so it could actually be abused, but it looks like the vassals are back home to defend against any attack coming out from that. I'm not sure. It didn't look like the Warden fired a shot, so my suspicion is actually Shambler is just going to sort of guard here and see what happens. He's switching over to Quasilisks, which makes sense because he wants to be able to pop the vassals. If you have, I want to say if you have 1.5 times as many Quasis as vassals in early game within reason, like, you know, he can have 6 vassals. If you have, I guess 10 because they come in pairs of 2, then you should be able to win that fight, especially if you're massing up on top of each other. Whereas, like, if it's closer to break even, which Zerg can accomplish, especially with a Larvosk colony, maybe a second hatch or something, or maybe just a second Larvosk, as a matter of fact, certainly could be a possibility, right? And so, anyway, we'll see what happens here, but it looks like gas production is resuming. That probably means he's going to look for Nathracors. He did scout out a massive number of vassals. There is a Matrix going down and 2 Automaton registers. I didn't comment on that yet, and 2 Wardens in the main as well to guard against any Nathracors that might come down, although, again, you'd probably want to matrices instead if it was going to be, spammed air. But we'll see how that goes. The idol is going to do AoE damage, so it's actually very effective in that respect. Keyan is almost like, oh, I know you're here, but that's just a coincidence, I suppose. So now the Quasilisks will show themselves. Just a couple of deaths here so far. I definitely would obviously favor the Quasilisks in this particular case. I didn't scout, or didn't quite register whether or not another vassal went down, but it doesn't really matter in this case. So, yep, we're going to see some more Spraith colonies going down. Oh, and this is the replay where Shambler complains. That's right. He's, I forgot, I was warned about this. So, the golems and the idols together are a formidable duo from the automaton register that we actually have not seen hitherto. So, we'll see what the Shambler's response is beyond saying, wah. I mean, obviously he was typing, but he could have had yet another Spraith colony, which may have protected him against a particular assault. He's also on one base, so too is Keyan. And we'll see what Keyan has to say for himself. I think he's letting his vassals talk for him. Meanwhile, we've got idle workers. Yeah, okay. Shambler did warn me that this replay has some silliness. And also that, again, when he watched the replay, he was like, actually, this was not nearly as bad as I thought. Indeed, Keyan does not have a gateway. So that's a good response. That's like the tilt them response. You know what I mean? So he's still like just rattling off statistic after statistic. It's okay. It's okay, bro. We'll see what happens next. One basing, got the fat minerals. Hey, he's typing, so he's banking money, which means now he can expand if he so desires. There is no back ramp for people wondering. This is a base that's actually very hard to take as your third. It's actually easier probably to take this base, but we will see what happens next. We do have the Hydrock going down another Larvosk, so I was hoping that this was going to be a Larvosk, even though its position is, again, out of the protective field, right? I was worried that this would be a 5th Spraith colony, which is like a huge investment, obviously. But now that he can get more larvae, he's just going to see what he can do as far as all-inning. And actually, again, if you have a decent number of Quasilisks, you can compete with that force, but at this point he's transitioned into the heavier hitters. The AoE won't do too much to Quasilisks, but idols do have decent armor, so this is a part where you would definitely want to go into some Hydralisks. Now thankfully the Hydrock did finish, so now Hydralisks can join the Quasis, and that should allow him to hold up at this ramp. Again, another thing for this particular map, you would probably want to put a macro hatch over here. And in fact, maybe like a low yield base could even be placed over here or something if NetherRealm wanted to update this map or not. Not sure what his stance is on that. He's obviously been doing his own thing. He's helping us with concept art for the game. And hey, there's some activity over here. The golem's going down fairly easy, actually. And again, these units aren't super clumped up, so the AoE is not going to hit them too hard. And so the golems, with the front line being thoroughly melted, Shambler may feel rejuvenated a little bit. He still has Zethra cores, so he knows that Keyan is, if he's on another base, it's going to be over in this direction here. There is another base, obviously, if I reveal the entire map. There's a base over here. And hey, we have a strange aviary randomly in here as a witness, perhaps. Don't know what's up with that. So yeah, now we are going to see whether Keyan wants to... what is Keyan's response at this point? Does he warp in anything else? Is he just going to continue sort of doing his thing? He saved up a lot of minerals, so I suspect maybe a grand library or two. No. He's actually going to go for the aquifer. That's fair. He might try to expand. Obviously, that will be revealed. You can't stop it with borrowed units, right? So that is something to keep in mind. Borrowed units do not stop expansions anymore, or building placements. I know I've said that before, but it pays to repeat. And I think Keyan has observed that, if he really wants to continue building idols and manifolds, he does need more gas income. He's still saving 600 minerals. I'm not sure what for. Maybe he's saving up a little bit of gas and hoping to do some embassy stuff. I do think a grand library wouldn't hurt at this point. Like it's a very versatile structure. Zethra cores end up getting unburrowed, and it looks like the Shambler might be trying to see if he can pierce. But this is a really hard base to assault. Now, what Shambler can do at this point is just try to contain Keyan. Keyan does have a lot of vassals, but that's the only air unit he has access to currently. He would need to drop an embassy to start going for envoys or something to that effect. Shambler will scout to see if this base has been taken. I think he suspects that it has, but still no expo for him. And he's not really doing anything back at home at all, actually. He's just entire army management here. And, leave a Quasilisk here just at the doorstep to see if anybody attacks it or whatever. And I think maybe he's confused. He's like, what? How has he not done anything? Yeah, maybe Protoss isn't just terribly OP. What the hell? My whole worldview is shifting. So we'll see. In fact, I don't know. Like, I almost suspect, like, under a normal circumstance, if I wasn't forewarned about the desync stuff, that, like, I mean, not the desync. I would have suspected that there was a replay desync here because, holy shit, like, Shambler's in a great position here. And, you know, what's going on exactly, so. Anyway, we're going to see what happens. A little bit of gas being coming Keyan's way. Still has an idle scribe, which is a bit strange. Don't know what's going on there. And, yeah, we're going to see maybe a small attack wave or scouting wave making manifest once again. Still no expo. Still nothing doing. The scribe has moved. It is being player controlled. Oh. Okay. What's he doing? What do you guys think he's doing? Comment below what you think he's doing. Oh, a sequestered icon. That's what he was saving the gas for. So he wants to go repeat with a Cantors, bro. You better watch out. We'll see what ends up happening there. We do still, yes, indeed, once again have some more Hydralisks. And the Satrosk is nearly done, so that will be a good eco advantage. Still one basing is Keyan. And, you know, with only one capped geyser and one ridge, this is 1.5 capped geysers for people who don't know the yields. It's 6 here and 3 here. So that's 9 gas per return in aggregate. I don't remember the exact amount of like seconds or whatever, but obviously Shambler has both an upgraded, like he has that in his main, and he's also just now achieved, you know, more, right? So he's going to have a significant amount of gas. Really, Keyan will have to win through superior tech and good micro at this point if he's going to win at all. So he's actually lost all of his resources, so he's pumped all of them into stuff, which to me signifies, yep, that's in a Cantor on the way. You know, honestly, like, Shambler obviously could have more info. He could be, you know, taking this Quasilisk and moving it around or whatever. It's fine where it is because it's a good signifier that, hey, there's, you know, nobody's moving, right? And I'm not sure why he wouldn't burrow it. Maybe he wants it to actually slow down the army or something. I don't know. But because there's something to be said about, like, the mind game of, like, hey, I am trying to, you know, make sure that you know that I know where your army is, right? That will make you do something different. For, like, it might slow Keyan's approach down a little bit or something. So, I don't know. It's interesting to think about that in many layers. In fact, one of the main reasons why PvP is so interesting to watch. So the embassy is coming down. That means that an envoy will soon be out. That's our name for the shuttle. So you'll see the Acantor be ferried around. And a good army of vassals here as well. This is at least 2 control groups. Obviously, in conjunction with all the golems, we might actually see some good activity when these 2 armies clash. And yeah, the Quasilisk is once again scouting around, seeing what's going on, reveals the Acantor. Not sure if he would have seen that, but he was, like, actively moving the unit around, so I'm sure that he will. And maybe that's another thing, is, like, as Keyan, you probably want to hide the fact that you have an Acantor, because now the Shambler knows, oh, okay, you know, obviously I can counter that with some air units. Now, he doesn't seem to be mutating any air units at this point. It's Zethra-cores, which is an odd... But, you know, I can understand if you turn them into Vorvicors, right? Like, the splash radius isn't infinite for the Acantor. And, obviously, mobile units will outrun the projectile. So... the sort of dumb fire that the Acantor has doesn't keep up with you. The projectile doesn't home in at all. It fires to where they were. And so they can be very good, but they can also be microed very well as well. So we're going to see what happens. The Envoy is going to go ahead and pick up a second Acantor, and that means that we are in for some interesting activity. Now, as soon as this... I'm not sure how familiar Shambler is with the Protoss tech tree, but as soon as the Envoy is spotted, he should also be aware that maybe he needs an Ovolith to spot for witnesses. And the Aral Iris is going down in a weird kind of way that, like, his SimCity here, it's fucking messed up, man. But, like, his resource pathing is definitely, let's just say it's peculiar. So that Envoy remaining at home for now, the Witness checking the base to see if anything was burrowed there. This would be a good time for Keyan to expand behind his army movements, just because when he's finally able to focus on his macro again, you know, even lower skill players who are lower APM or whatever, you can... get into certain good habits by, like, expanding behind an attack, especially if you have the money floating around, and using that opportunity to, like, okay, well, at least the base is going to be constructing itself, and, you know, in the meantime, I will, you know, be focusing on my army, and then after my army is gone, you know, Reaver Ball of Death. I guess Shambler is either... Oh, when? Yeah, there you go. I was like, is this replay actually desynced, or is he's just predicting it? I see, okay. So no Ovolith. Keyan will scout this respectable force. He'll have to plan his attack a little bit. Maybe he uses the Envoy as a distraction, but there's also 5 fucking Sprayed colonies in the base, or 4. So I don't know about that one. So we're going to see what happens, but the Witness is in. No Ovolith. I'm not sure if he scouted the Envoy or not. At this point, the Vassals are just sort of causing some silliness. And again, if this engagement was a little bit more active, and he was a little bit more focused on the Acantors themselves, One of them almost popped, but I think some of his units were busy with the front line. And so now, yeah, the front line's going to desync from the Acantors because they are indeed so slow. We actually should see a pretty good response out of the Shambler here. Yes, the units are on his side of the map, but again, Keyan doesn't have an Expo going down behind this. So as long as there's a little bit more movement from the Hydralisks, he can still win this engagement, especially when the Acantors are moving so far forward. That's one of them popping. That was the low HP one, admittedly. So the high HP one is still there. He's almost full HP, but now the idols are gone. So it's really just about whether or not the reinforcements, and he does have some Hydras, can deal with the Acantor. There's still some AoE coming out from the idols as well. They are taking some free hits over here, so this one's basically dead. But it looks like Shambler wants none of that. He's just going to try to focus down the Acantor. And yet there was not a super good micro coming out of that. So Keyan almost did lose it. But yeah, at this point, it's just a few hits away from death. It's just that because he didn't kill the low HP idol, it's actually really hard for his Zethar Cores to go anywhere. And now the Envoy will whisk it away. So, you know, honestly, not crippling. It was just an army v army fight. There was basically 0 econ damage. You can say if you wanted to rebuild the static defense, that means there's some eco damage from the, like the, whatever you would call it, the fact that you have to use the workers for that, right? But beyond that, like, that hasn't even been committed to just yet. And again, Keyan's floating so much money. Now he's expanding, right? But he, like, Shambler has a dedicated advantage. He's even gotten to tier 2 or 1.75 or whatever you want to call that, and he has yet to use it, right? He's not dropping a Hydrock Den or a Quasarok Pool upgrade. He is going to go ahead and drop a Macro Hatch. It's an interesting choice. He still has not gone for an Ovaleth, it doesn't look like, so I will have to keep watch on that. And I guess Keyan will keep watch on that. He's basically a commentating witness himself at this point because he can see, at least this side of the activity, he can see the units moving, so he can prepare himself for that. And Architect is on the field. Now, Architects are 200 gas now. They have been nerfed since the last time you may have seen them in a castover. And they also have a delay before they can fire. So actually, I guess that's not true. I think they were probably nerfed in this way when you saw them in the Mist versus Shambler game. So a single Architect here is very manageable. And actually only another one is not even halfway done yet. So this army could breach this, but I'm not sure if Shambler knows that or has supreme confidence. Even if it were to fall in aggregate, right, up against the second force of units or whatever, the pressure it would put would obviously delay the mobility, right? Something that I think Shambler should try to go for is like maybe a bunch of Nathar Cores, not just a dive bomb onto the Acantors when they're unloaded, but also to chase around the Envoy, right? You need some sort of fast, nimble unit. Skithar Cores are a little bit faster than Nathar Cores now, so maybe you could even go for something like that. Either way, they're impervious to the Acantor itself, and they will indeed help you. So in this case, you know, it's already super low. I'm not sure if he even registered that. Like, he doesn't seem to be reacting at all. And he's not keeping any units in his base. So this is actually potentially catastrophic, depending on where exactly the Envoy unloads. It looks like he will go ahead and drop it back here, and there is no static defense. This is going to be very painful for Shambler, and I imagine this will be the form of some salt. That's a lot, man. That's a lot of dead workers. Still no reaction. Is the reaction coming in the keyboard department, or what? He's slowly moving some units. He's not moving the Zethar Cores that are literally spawning right there. And now maybe his Iral Iris gets popped too. So he is going to go ahead and try to defend that. Yep, okay, just turn and fight that. So again, not focusing down the low HP one. There was definitely room to save that. If you focus down the low HP one before Keyan responds, then the Zethar Cores just go kaput. Now this attack force on the other side is still going. He didn't even use his tech, by the way, so that's another thing to keep in mind. But it looks like this is almost a half-hearted attack, right? Some of the units were maybe shuffled off for defense. Other units are just sitting here behind the lines. Yeah, there's really no front line at all now, but there are 2 Architects, so that is admittedly an issue. And he's also lost a lot of mining on that side of the base. So we'll see what he decides to go for. He's going to restock workers. Now Keyan he doesn't know this, of course, the Shambler, because he doesn't have very much intel. But Keyan has no fucking workers on this base, bro. He's got nothing. He's still on one base for all intents and purposes. Now, that might change soon if he's not even using his other worker queues, right? So, like, at this point, yes, he has Cenotaphs, and that will help him with a little bit of front line, although I think it'll melt deceptively fast. But yeah, this is not over. This is by no means a solved game, per se. And the Shambler, I think maybe the Shambler intuits this. He is still moving out once again. He wants to keep the fight on his opponent's turf. The Acantor losses, even though they did most likely pay for themselves with what they killed, they are proving to, like, now there's a bit of a transition into Architects. Now this is the time where you really do think about going for Nathar Cores, right? They, you know, obviously the Architects have decent armor, but I think Naths have 2 armor pen, if I'm not mistaken, so not terrible damage anyway. And obviously, if they're stacked, the Architects will take AoE damage, right? So again, I'm a little puzzled to not see any AoE whatsoever, any flyer units whatsoever. Neither of those 2 classes of unit have been tapped into by the Shambler. He's just been trying to do single target damage, swarm, and etc. And yeah, he's going to get BTFO'd because at this point there's 3 Architects, there's 3 Matrices as well. And so, he's keeping Keyan on the back foot, but he's not being successful. You could also try drops, obviously. Keyan just did that to you. You obviously want the Avaleth. Okay, so now he's going to go tilt mode instead. So let's see what he says. Let's see what else happens. Oh, okay, never mind. He's gone for Hydras. There is no way he proceeds to build more Hydralisks. Okay, and then he resaturates that Rage. I'm not sure why he took it away to begin with. It might have been like a mistake, or maybe he just really wanted more minerals or something. I don't know the details. Still no Avaleth to detect the witness in his main, or his Nat. He probably doesn't even know that existed. And yeah, obviously at this point we're just kind of having a little bit of fun at Shambler's expense, at past Shambler's expense, because present Shambler, I guess technically also past Shambler, did say that he understands that this game was very winnable. So it's a good replay despite his what would you say, his intolerance towards Protoss. Yeah, there you go. Decent amount of money now, especially minerals. So I suppose he's probably saving up to rebuild his tech, but nobody knows for sure. And yeah, even more Architects going down. So Zethar scouting to make sure, yeah, at this point there is no third base, so he can take the macro advantage if he so desires. He's actually using all of the minerals he has, he's sending them off to gobble up the remaining bases that are on the map, sans this. The move out coming out from Keyan, the Architect's obviously a little bit desynced, and if you can play this to your advantage as in Shambler's position, you can start to shred this front line before it has time to really do much of anything in sync with the Architects, right? So in this particular case, I think the front line is down to maybe a third to a half of what it was, and that doesn't sound like a huge amount, like there's still a decent number of units here, but there's way more units for the Shambler. So if the Shambler strikes, like if he was just to turn on him with all of the units, he's going to fall back instead. That could have been pretty brutal. But Keyan actually wisely is massing his units up, and he's sending another round of Legionnaires to try and buy some time. Legionnaires, obviously, when they target a unit, it creates a little vortex graphic over them. And while that vortex graphic is there, that's a visual read for the fact that that unit can then be teleported to by other Legionnaires. So this is a good timing, actually. The Architects are way back, and they're even going to get focused down or distracted by the Nathricors. We're finally seeing some AoE for that. And even though the Nathricors were occupied by some stuff at the front, the Architects were actually distracted by the 1 or 2 that were in the back. So you can see they were totally neutralized by that. And now we... Oh man, what a goofball. So now we get some reverse salt. Yeah, it's crazy how Architects were so good when you kept to their range. That is really weird. I'm surprised that would have happened. When your opponent successfully, built something that actually did a pretty good job against you. Nathricor is now ripping apart Keyan's economy. Obviously, this is a decent number of them, and that's where all of the gas went, it looks like. So now the front is clear, and we're going to see what happens there from the next bit. Now, at this point, again, he gets one good shot off before it's kaputs, because obviously it only splits after traveling a certain amount of range. Which is why they're definitely used more like artillery. He doesn't... Again, I think maybe this attack... At least the number of Nathricors that were still alive would have been significantly reduced had the... these 2 Wardens been Matrices. But that's more gas, right? And now it's just a dive bomb of Nathricors. Yo, he says. What is... That's a good question, yo. I don't know what's yo. I'm not even sure. I don't see the Hierophant corpses, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that was him accidentally hitting the escape key or something. Not that it would have made a difference at this point, right? But okay, it's funny. We get salt from both sides, bro. We get salt from all sides. Always good to hear. So we're going to see what happens. So Matrices going down, but at this point, I mean... He's not mining from any of these satellite bases, but he has them. And so as soon as his APM returns to his macro, he'll just send another group of units out. Actually, interestingly enough, he doesn't really have another group of units. Like, he has the eco advantage, obviously, because he's got 2 mining bases, and he's building workers at all the other ones, and he's starting to get gas, and yada, yada, yada. But, like, realistically speaking, Keyan can't really do much against this particular force. He's going for lattices. I'm not really sure why he would go for lattices in this particular case. He needs AoE or multi-target, and that's why he's gone for the matrices, which makes sense, right? But I'm not sure about... Like, what would he go lattices for? There's so many Nathricors all over the place. By the way, Shambler is red, and Keyan is cyan, in case people wanted the colors for this particular one. I have to start remembering to do that. Not only will it be good because in the future, I think if the colors are broken, like if the colors are wrong, it's a sign that the replay isn't working. Although sometimes the colors are right, or whatever, and the replay is still broken. So it's not a surefire sign, but that might be useful anyway in the future. So it looks like there's going to be more vassals. Yeah, I guess with enough vassals, he could actually pop the Spraith colonies. They only have 1 armor and 200 health. And one of them was already killed by the Cantor anyway. But also, more crucially, he can just sweep through these satellite bases and clear out the minuscule like rabble of defenders and cause Shambler some grief. Instead, he's just going to see what he can do to lure the Nathricors into the matrices. Surprisingly, it's not exactly... Surprisingly, it's not exactly working. Okay, this time it is. We'll see what happens. Shambler just saying, all right, fuck it, I'll see what I can do. And there's another round going in the resource line. Only killing a single one, obviously grievously wounding another one. But I think it's a good sign that Keyan might be able to hold out against infinite numbers of Nathricors. Of course, you know, as soon as the tech node goes down or whatever, he's... I mean, even with what he has... I'm kind of surprised this witness never moved from this position. I think maybe he was intending to put one in all of the bases, but... There you go, a couple extras. Why not? Just keep pumping them, dude. And good, smart to have secondary pylon power as well. This one is actually a bait, because intuitively you wouldn't look at this and think, oh, this is powered by this pylon. But it is. So, I don't know if we should just show the power field if you have a detector on it or something, but it's funny. Anyway, it's interesting. So, yeah, at this point, I'm not really sure that the game really has reason to go on for much longer. I honestly think Shambler could just A-move all of his Nathricors. And we already kind of know at this point Keyan has lost, I think. Although, hey, his main is clear, so maybe there's a chance. He is pumping millions of vassals. I really don't know what he's planning to do with this. Like, again, the most that would happen is that he sweeps through some of the satellite bases, but with the exception of this one, they're all now much heavier guarded, more heavily guarded with all the units that are standing tall at this point. So another Nexus being planned to go down in the main. Obviously, resources do not deplete. So this base is probably not the one he was hoping to... He didn't even know this base was here, right? So he's just lost a decent chunk of vassals. He's going to go ahead and see what happens next. I'm looking for any army movements, but really it doesn't look like there's too many. He's rallied to his front gate there. Yep, scouted another one. Sees yet another base being taken. At this point, I think Keyan knows he's definitely not favored. Right? So we're going to have to see what happens. But, you know, the force is massing up. Maybe... Oh, man, he's clumped up so tightly against the Nath. There's honestly not that many Nathricors, right? But at this point, I think he sees that, oh, shit, there's, you know, units coming out. There is no sequestered icon, so this is just like a stray Cantor that stayed alive. And, you know, this side of the attack force getting desynced as well is pretty good. Obviously, at this point, the vassal's helping to clean up and distract. Not a single unit will fall... Not a single structure will even take health damage, it looks like. And here comes some Nathricors, but obviously they'll get cleaned right up. This force is a little bit more scary in terms of the numbers, so we should see at least one Matrix falling. And the vassals standing on top of the Matrix are not great either, right? I mean, Terminal Surge affects buildings, so you can remember that, although most people probably don't know that. And yes, these vassals will kill the Hydras at great cost, but there's more units coming. It's just like the endless macro, right? And not enough matrices. Even though Keyan has 600 minerals and 350 gas, he's not brought a scribe to build more matrices, and they wouldn't finish in time anyway. So I think we'll finally see a crushing tide coming out of the Zerg. And it's funny because there was like 1 or 2 Izir cores built, but that's their passive name, Crushing Tide. Good luck making that useful against this particular composition. The Acantor is money at this point. Needs a little bit more micro. And there you go. He actually could have attacked his own pylon there for a money shot, but he probably was like, why would I attack my own thing, lol. And so, there you go. 1 HP. It's living. It's still alive. It's getting shields back. It might be able to preserve. Nope, never mind. It's dead. Gets one last shot off. Goes for the Zoroastrolets, funnily enough. Vassals are out. Okay, Hydras are dead. All right. Can you survive another wave? This is now a tower defense, and it's not going Keyan's way so far. I think the creeps are winning. What would you call the tower defense? The monsters, mobs, or something like that? Yeah, my game of tower defense comes. Wow, I swear I didn't pre-watch this. It's just. I mean, I guess it's not that wacky that somebody would think about tower defense under this context. So there you go. That is that. So what are some takeaways from this particular game as we take a look at the score screen? Don't mind the computer. That's just neither of them configured his game in a weird way, I think. But probably, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we used to need computers to be able to start games, and we don't anymore, and that's probably just a holdover from that. So anyway, besides that, what have we learned here? So if we were to trust the words of the players, who have since, at least the Shambler, on the Shambler side, they have since recanted their testimony, but apparently Protoss is so OP because nothing Zerg can do against them can do anything. Meanwhile, Zerg actually wins that particular match, mostly due to, I would say, like probably poor macro decision-making from Keyan, and not great management of the Acantors either. When it was dropped, it obviously did a lot of damage, but it could have done more, and also, I mean, it could have been responded to more. There could have been improvements on both sides, we'll say. Then, without adequate information, despite having a witness in the base, and again, witnesses detection allows you to see the units that are in production, even in eggs or whatever. So Keyan could have moved that witness to the main and clicked on the eggs. Maybe there were even Athracores being built in the main anyway. But Architects, without much of a front line, because he lost most of his front line moving out and then had the front line sort of out of place and didn't respond to the Nathracores, assumes that Architects are actually the problem with that instead of like the fact that he was not managing it very well, right? So I think like you'd make a better argument that Architects were overpowered actually if you stationed a bunch of idols by them to peel basically the Naths and then microed the Architects to target specifically the like the Hydralisks or whatever in the backline. Not saying it would be particularly easy to do, but it is something that you can do, right? Interesting that people end up responding to that. Now, I will admit that the 200 gas cost nerf or whatever, them being 200 gas each, could have been potentially a little bit early. Like I could have jumped the gun on that one. But I have a feeling it will justify that particular cost when used well. So it's really just a matter of like, we need to get better at using it, I think. That's my suspicion. Anyway, that was the cast over. Obviously, this is a much longer game than the first, but happy to get 2 games out there for you guys. If you have your own opinions on balance, let me know in the comments, or maybe hop on over to the Discord server and make your opinions known there. We obviously talk quite a bit about the game, and it's always interesting to see people's reactions, particularly players who I know could improve a lot. Even myself, like I try to replicate the issues if I'm going to make a balance change. And that's sort of like me replicating the issues of the Architects is like, one of the main things is that there's no way to tell when they were attacking because they used to just fire immediately. And also the fact that they costed what they did, despite doing how much damage they can do, kind of seemed out of whack to me. So really, those are the only changes that I made to them, and we're going to see how they play out over time with some more games. So yeah, I guess type the letter U in the comments if you want more Architects and also more Salt, and I'll see you next time.